The First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon. And I began by asking her why she was pressing for a referendum on Scottish independence when surely the priority should be to get us through this COVID-19 crisis.
Well, I don't propose having a referendum in this moment. I mean, I have said quite clearly, if I'm re-elected as First Minister, my overriding priority is the same as it has been for the past 12 months, to steer the country through the remainder of the pandemic and then to kickstart and drive the recovery. The SNP has put forward a manifesto in this election that is the boldest, perhaps most transformative programme any party has put before the Scottish people in a Scottish Parliament campaign. And then when the crisis is over, we should have the opportunity to decide whether we become independent or not. Because in terms of the long-term recovery, we have to be able to decide what it is we want to recover to, what kind of country we are seeking to rebuild, and whether we allow that to be one in the image of Boris Johnson and his band of Brexiteers, or whether we want that to be a country founded on the values that the majority of people in Scotland support.
Now, I mean, people will want to know what you mean by not now and when this crisis is over. What is your best guess, therefore, about when Scotland will be ready for a referendum?
Well, look, I don't have a crystal ball when it comes to COVID, and I've tried to be really frank with people about that all through the crisis so far. We're in a much, much stronger position now than we have been certainly since the end of the first wave, and that's true of the UK as a whole. Cases are being suppressed. The vaccination rollout is going really well. But, we don't know exactly what is ahead of us. In our manifesto, we have said that if the COVID conditions allow, then we would want the referendum to be in the first half of the parliamentary term. Now, it's a 5-year parliamentary term, so that would mean before the end of 2023. Now, in terms, though, of what exactly that means, that will involve looking at a degree of a number of different factors around the pandemic, and, of course, applying some judgment, and for the Scottish Parliament to apply the judgment within that context about when the time is right. But having that right to choose, it's like anybody in their own life or in their own family circumstances, just as it is for the country. If you don't choose your own future and take control of your own destiny, then often somebody else decides it for you. And over the past few years, Scotland has felt very acutely what it is like to have a government that we didn't vote for in Westminster taking the wrong decisions for us. We've been dragged out of the European Union against our will. And of course, many of our businesses, many people across Scotland are currently paying the price of that. And
can I just ask, is your determination to go for a referendum conditional on the SNP getting a clear majority?
Look, there has to be a simple majority in the Scottish Parliament of MSPs who support a referendum for there to be a mandate for a referendum. Now, obviously, I hope the SNP wins a majority, but there is a proportional representation system, electoral system to the Scottish Parliament, so that's not an easy thing to do. You require to almost break the system to do it, but that's what we're working hard to try to achieve. But a simple majority of pro-independence MSPs is what you need to secure the mandate for a referendum.
So if there was a majority of you and the Greens, as far as you're concerned, that would be enough?
Well, it's not as far as I'm concerned. That would, by any objective standard of democracy, be enough. The Greens support a referendum in the next term of Parliament, just as the SNP support a referendum in the next term of Parliament. So if together we had that majority for a referendum, then yes, by any standard of democracy. But yeah, I'm, as the leader of the SNP, it won't surprise you to hear, hoping that the SNP can win a majority in our own right, and working very hard to try to achieve that in the remaining days of this campaign.
Now, your former colleague Alex Salmond says he's helping the independence cause. Is he?
I'm not sure that is the case, but I want to focus on the SNP's campaign. What I've learned over all of my years in politics, and it's something that I know Alex Salmond used to agree with me on, is that you have to build a majority for independence, and you have to allow that majority to express itself in a legitimate process if independence is to be achieved, which is what I'm interested in seeing.
A couple of very quick questions. You rightly said health, COVID, front and centre of all our minds. The respected Institute for Fiscal Studies says that what you're promising for the NHS is actually less than what's being promised for England. So why vote for the SNP?
Well, I don't. The IFS is very respected, but there's 2 points I would make there. Firstly, we only know what the UK government is promising for England up until, I think, 2023. The commitment in the SNP manifesto goes up until 2026. So you're sort of comparing apples and pears there. But the more fundamental point is that the SNP commitment is effectively the backstop, the minimum. If the UK government allocates more to health, then the operation of the Barnett formula, if that means more to the Scottish government, then all of that will go to health.
Some would say that's an irrelevant point in the sense that in your ideal world, there wouldn't be a Barnett consequential because you'd be independent.
Well, but that's how we're funded. That's not my choice. And remember, the money that comes to Scotland is not some gift from the Westminster government. It comes either from the taxes people in Scotland pay, we just happen to send them to the Treasury first before we get them back, or it's Scotland's share of the UK's now, quite rightly, quite substantial borrowing.
And just finally, you've obviously had your differences of opinion with the British Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. You'll have seen that he was, some would say, pulling out the stops by promising no change to tax to Dyson to get them to fill a ventilator shortage. It was a desperate time, wasn't it? I mean, surely you have sympathy with him and just doing whatever he could to get ventilators.
Well, I think there's two things. Firstly, it was a desperate time and we were all trying to do all of the right things to keep people safe. But we were asking all sorts of people to do that, nurses and doctors on the front line, and they didn't all have the Prime Minister's mobile phone number or my mobile phone number to ask for special treatment when it came to tax. So I do think, you know, we should think about that very carefully. And then there's just the sort of, you know, almost behind the scenes, you know, deals being done. Look, there is, I think, a quite powerful stench of sleaze starting to surround this Tory government, and I think they really need to open it up to some fresh air. My colleague Ian Blackford has rightly called for a full inquiry into all of this today, and it's a call that I fully back.
But, so you don't accept the idea that these were exceptional times?
I know they were exceptional times and we were all working with individuals, with businesses to try to get everything that the country needed. So asking a businessman to help out with trying to come up with new designs for ventilators, but having almost a sort of, you know, back chat through private text messages to effectively offer preferential treatment around taxation. That's something that nobody else that was working really hard to help get through this crisis had the ability to text. You know, the nurse working really hard didn't have the ability to text Boris Johnson and ask him to fix things so that she didn't have to pay as much tax. So, you know, there are ways of doing things that are, you know, the issue of whether it was an appropriate thing to do, and then there is the issue of how that was done. And I think it is really important. This comes on the back of the David Cameron lobbying over Greensills. I think it is time to open this up to full, proper public inquiry, and I back Ian Blackford's call.
Nicola Sturgeon, as ever, good to see you.